I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chairwaves. My guest today is a chair from Salt Lake City, Utah, the great state of Utah, Laura Langehaug, and the last name is challenging, but I appreciate you telling me how to pronounce it correctly. Laura Langehaug from Salt Lake City, and she is a Vistage chair of a CE group. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
I tend to keep it that. So I hope that you say that on the way out. That's my goal. If you're still happy to be here when we're done, that's a win in my book.
That's a fair point. And just so you know, you're one of my favorite podcasts. I drive a lot in the Salt Lake City metro area to visit members, and I have the honor of listening to you and other fellow chairs.
I love your fellow chairs.
I do too.
So you have you've had a long career in I believe a couple of different industries. So tell me, where did it all begin for you? What was your journey to leadership in your career?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think, my journey really started on the human capital management side, and I started working for a company that recruited me. I'm Chicago born, raised, went to school, and they moved me out to San Francisco, California, and it was really the start of my career working for a Fortune 500 company to recruit more on the technical component, but then I moved into executive recruiting. So I started to actually recruit for CEOs, CMOs, CFOs, and I really loved that piece of it, which then led me into other aspects of HR, what we know human capital will be. And really deeply honored. I've gotten to work for some amazing companies to help grow and scale through acquisition. And that was really my love of the HR side, but more importantly, really working with business leaders. I think it's one of the things that I saw along the way is particularly working with CEOs directly and working through my coaching certificate is the isolation piece of it. And so that's where I get to really lean in, and that's where I really get to see the benefit of a peer group from, in my Vistage group.
How did, in terms of the isolation piece and loneliness, how did you experience that in working with folks? At what point did you sort of find that was the common thread that's holding a lot of people together in terms of their struggles?
Yeah. I think in so many ways, at least in my, 30-year career, I think it's the aspect that we have of business leaders that they know it all. And whether they do know it all, which we know they don't, that was kind of the expectation. And I think that was really maybe more the CEO piece, right? You have your armor on, and you really get to manage all aspects of your life, and certainly from the business aspect of it. And so I think I started to see that more and more as I started to do and lean into the coaching side and working with business leaders. So that really, I think it opened it up, particularly why a peer group makes sense to me, right? In hand in hand, working on the coaching side on one-on-ones.
Had you had any experience with a peer group prior to being a Vistage chair?
I did not. They reached out to me, Vistage, and said, we would love to talk about you running a peer group. And I actually said, I have no idea really what that means. it makes sense in theory, but I didn't really know. And so then a mentor chair here invited me to their peer group, and I got to sit in and for a couple of months, and it really made sense that I could understand the power behind a peer group.
Tell me about your journey to becoming a Vistage chair. What were you doing at the time? What was your primary gig when you were first introduced to Vistage? And I would love to hear about the decision. I would love to hear about your experience at Chair Academy and starting your group.
Yeah. So I was leading a company, a technology based company, global, and running all the human capital function. I'd been through four CEOs within the company. I'd
Oh
also
wow!
gone through a pandemic. I had the global expectations of all the nuances, right? Different countries had during that time period of working, not working, all the aspects of that, social discourse. So, I think coming out of all of that, there was a period of just burnout for me personally, and really kind of recalibrating what do I want to do when I grow up, so to speak. And, I don't know if the stars aligned, but Vistage at that same time of me really thinking through had reached out to me. And that's when the conversation started to happen. So it
So it was
really
like
made sense.
karma or kismet or fate, whatever you
I
want
think
to
so,
call it.
right? Yeah,
Everything was just working out.
the stars aligned, that is for sure. And
Awesome.
yeah, and so in the journey, I think you asked about my about Chair Academy, and boy, talk about overwhelming and talk about meeting amazing people and amazing chairs and best practice chairs. Lots of information, as they say, drinking from a fire hose, so to speak, and coming out of it with um, all the things I think my leaders have come out of it, right? That imposter syndrome. Well, I look different than some of the other chairs. I started to have my own head speak about why someone may not join my group or that person wouldn't be a fit. And you learn so much about navigating that piece of it that, boy, am I humbled by the process and by the people.
What was it like starting your first group?
It was certainly humbling. I guess that's the word that pops in my head. I think um, you have these pod groups and the chairs that help you and support you in that, and we're all in this together. So there's a lot of learning, camaraderie, and collaboration. um, but lots of learnings. I thought, oh, I've done executive recruiting, I've worked with many leaders, I know how to do this. And you just, you go through highs and lows, and I think this has made me where I am today an even better chair. But I'm also running my own business on that side of it through the coaching piece of it. So I think it makes me better at business development, naturally having better conversations, and naturally being curious as well, and allowing less space in my head I'm renting out to all the head speak that we all go through as business
Right.
leaders.
What do you think is the biggest thing that you've had to learn, adapt? How has your role as a chair been different for you than your corporate roles, than your role now as a coach and entrepreneur? How what made what is different about showing up as a Vistage chair for you?
Yeah, I think, Eric, for me, it really is that vulnerability piece. So, as much as I expect my members to show up and remove the armor, I also have to do that. So, um, that has been something that certainly wasn't always in the forefront. I was usually the helper, the supporter, the leader in many ways, just like each one of my members. And so for me, I think letting down the armor, being vulnerable, and sharing my journey personally professionally and community has lent to better conversations.
Well, and everything, the vulnerability piece is an interesting one because for me, and a lot of Vistage chairs have said similar things that I've talked to. But with the vulnerability thing, that the really interesting thing, so for me coming up, and obviously at first in corporate, and then as a business owner, you're not supposed to in business tell people how you're really doing. You're
Right.
supposed to come to work and everything is great. You've got people on your team. If you're running corporate, you got people who work for you when you're an entrepreneur, and you have employees, and they're looking for you for guidance. And hey, everything's great, right? And it's like, oh yeah, it's great. And you go to a networking dinner, and they say, well, hey, how's business? And you're like, oh my god, it's fantastic. Let me tell you about it. And that vulnerability piece is something that we're always, I feel like we're taught as professionals to keep way, way down below the surface. How do you access that as a chair, and how do you convince other people to do the same thing?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think, the thing for me, I think what we do in our group is it's definitely an opportunity. We do check-ins, and the check-in piece is really where we get to show up and be accountable, certainly to the group, but more importantly to ourselves. And so, how do we rate ourselves in our health, our relationships, and our business? And so that's the opportunity that we have to really share what has happened, in that month that we haven't been together as a group. In addition to, as we think about issue opportunity processing, which is a huge opportunity for my group in the afternoon, that's an opportunity for me to lead, certainly facilitate the conversation, but also share as I've navigated highs and lows personally and professionally. And I'm very frank and honest with my group.
What would you say is the biggest thing? So now you've been, how many years have you been a chair now?
It's a year.
A year. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Officially in November of 2025. So just
Okay.
a few months ago.
All right. Happy belated chair birthday. That's
Thank you.
amazing. What's the biggest thing that your group has taught you in those 14 months?
Wow. I think the thing that's been really amazing to see and beautiful, and I've learned from, is it's the opportunity to really listen. And I think, we've processed a couple of issues and opportunities, particularly with all of the things happening um, in the world today. And I think, tariffs have been certainly a large aspect with my group and impediment on it and some of the governmental changes. And it's interesting to see the group come together and really support each other and hold accountability with not judgment, right? All various
Mm-hmm.
different companies, backgrounds, and business sectors. And so for me to see that has really been eye opening for me, leaning in, being curious, and asking questions. And so I think those are just the learnings for me is when it becomes uncomfortable, it's the time to lean in and ask questions.
You've got one thing that I definitely noted from, and thank you for sending me all kinds of good notes ahead of this, but one of the things that I noticed right away is that you've got your group is diverse in some very cool ways. First of all, you've got the from that I have ever heard of the youngest CE member, and it might be that there is one that's younger somewhere,
Sure.
but a 24-year-old Vistage CE member is a very unconventional type of thing to find in a group. What was how did that person join the group and feel at home. And what were the reactions of the other folks in the room in sharing their space with somebody that probably is only a couple of years removed from college? You've got, seasoned professionals, and then there's like this child. How
Yeah.
do, how do you guys deal with that? I imagine it's a very special sort of relationship.
It's a great question, Eric, because I think, it hasn't really come up as a loud question with the group. I think the thing that the whole group brings is it is multi-generational. So I
Hmm.
think, in my impression, the world is really navigating that, right? And the sense you now have Gen Z, Gen
Oh
Y,
yeah.
Gen X, baby boomers, and that really is a consistency of my group. I think from a group standpoint, um, my youngest member adds so much richness to it because he has a family owned business that he now runs and had to navigate shifting some of those pillars and some of the obstacles that you have with a family owned business. But he also has leaned in to really share the dynamics of his leadership abilities on culture for a younger generation. And so as I think about it, and I have some of my other CEOs having multi-generational cultures, they've really leaned into him in supporting that aspect of it and understanding how culture works within a workforce, and how to navigate and how to set goals and parameters on a generational side. So I don't know if that helps answer it, but that's
Yeah.
kind of how
Well,
I see it. I think there's really a nice blend of learning on both sides.
I think it's cool that there's somebody who can demonstrate the TikTok dances and
Right,
accurately explain what 6'7" means.
right.
Who knows? No, it's very cool. But you've got a lot of diversity in the group. It sounds like from different types of businesses, nonprofit, family owned, uh, entrepreneur, founder led, folks that have been bought or invested in by PE types of firms. Um, what do you think makes the chemistry in the room for your group?
Yeah, the chemistry in the room. Um, First off, I think, we've certainly taken some time to get to know each other and start to build that connective tissue. I think the chemistry comes from the thing I think about my group is big hearts, right? We're not just about our head, but it's head and heart combination. So all of the members, men and women in the room, really lean into that and are so supportive of that, that I really think that opens up the natural dialogue and conversations. It wasn't the first meeting that I will say that everyone opened up, but it's certainly over
Right.
the last, 6 months has really gained momentum, that most of my members are going out to coffee or lunch. Some are even planning trips like camping and so forth. So now these are folks that didn't know each other before they came into the group and now know each other. So I think that's the opportunity. And I'd like to say that's a little bit of me because I do like to lead head and heart. So hopefully that's how I look at members within my group, is being curious, accountable, but also leading with their head and heart.
How would you characterize the culture of your group? And every one thing that I've known. So you've got Vistage, and Vistage is obviously there are things. There's DNA that is Vistage that runs through everything that's Vistage. But just like me and you are different, all the groups end up tending to be different too, and a lot of that is a reflection of you and the culture that you bring as a chair. How would you describe the culture of your group?
Yeah, I think that everyone shows up with, I mentioned head and heart, and certainly with a care, an ability to listen, be curious, but really no ego. And so I think it really lends to have a natural, um, I'm going to say it, but it's a loving group of people who really, we've gone through highs and lows, and whether that be areas of religion, family discourse, or just ups and downs of bit of the business in general, that has really lent to having some really deep dive in conversation.
When when you're, and obviously you've got a lot of HR background in your group, how does that manifest itself in the way that your group, or in the questions that you're asked, and the way that you lead? How does that particular background make you and the group unique?
Yeah. Well, I think where that stems from is it's people and relationships. And so I think that is a huge part, whether it be um, building a culture within your company, retention, um, the recruitment piece, hiring, onboarding. Those are all big conversations that I know each one of my members at one point in their business have worked with. So they certainly lend to have rich conversations. But I also think that's where I can lean in and certainly share some of the dynamics of the various companies that I've worked with and, and background.
How do you, when you're talking to folks, and talk to chairs a lot about how it's not a sales process per se when you're trying to recruit a member. It's a mutual fit. It's almost more like joining a company than it is buying a service. I guess, except the money goes the other way. But
That's
but
a fair
but
point.
regardless,
Yeah,
um, but you have to be a fit for each other.
that's right.
When you're sitting down with a prospective member, what are the things that tell you whether that person is a fit for your group?
Um, I think it's certainly, I've kind of led with curious. I do think that's an important piece. I think it's accountability. How do they show up for our conversation, our one on one? How much do they lean in? Um, how curious are they about myself, about the members? Because sometimes it can go the other way. I've had it where potential member candidates, they want to talk about themselves and the business, and that's a great component. But when you're not also leaning in to find out about the group and what that would look like, and how do we measure success and all of those aspects, that's another piece, right? Are they there for their growth and for other people as much as, what are they going to get from it, but what are they going to give and lend to the conversations around, and not just about networking or building their own business, if that makes sense.
What do you think your secret sauce as a chair is? What do you think is the thing that that makes you good at this?
I care, and it really feels, it's my why. It's really what I've done throughout my career, but now I get to do it and really change lives and see how that happens personally. That it's not it's a CEO or a business leader who wants to show up and not just check the box, but they're showing up because they want to grow. And so that for me is selfishly, I it fills my cup, so to speak.
That's a great answer. You're based in the Salt Lake City area, I went there for the first time ever this summer. Very very cool town, and you're up in the mountains.
I am. I live in Heber City. So I live outside of Park City, a few miles, but most of my members are within the Salt Lake City Valley. So I
Okay.
get to travel and commute a lot, which is hence I get to listen to your podcast quite a
Oh,
bit.
there you go. Awesome. Well, I'm glad that I can help with passing the time on the road. That's the nicest thing anybody has said about me. So I appreciate that. And you've got a family, you've got two kids, and is it true then that you have a son named Langehaug? Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, he does have Lang, but he's Lang Livonius. So he
Okay.
does have his father's last name, and
Oh, okay. I didn't.
I did not curse him with that, Eric. But
I was like, what did you do to this boy? But
I know. You're not the first to say that. So he has my dad's first name. My dad's nickname is Lang, and so
okay.
I gave him my dad's name. And the other part is he gets my initials, LML, and I'm LML.
Well, that's pretty cool.
See, being selfish again.
Yeah, my middle name is Timothy because my dad wanted to name me Timber, and my last name is Wolf, and my mother was like, "There is no way in hell that you are naming our child Timberwolf." So Timothy ended up being my middle name.
I love Timberwolf. Timothy's
Little,
beautiful too, but that's
yeah,
really
it would have been a thing,
it would have been a
and
thing.
I'm glad that I didn't have to work that hard to hold on to my lunch money, but it's all good. Thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. This has been the time's just flown by. What is the best way for folks to get in touch with you if they have questions about Vistage, about living in the mountains, and checking out Salt Lake City, which is a cool town? What's the best way for folks to reach you?
Yeah, certainly through the Vistage. If you look my name up, Google it, whatnot, you'll see my business, LML Consulting. And you'll also have my phone number and LinkedIn, definitely, Laura Langehaug. So all of my contact information, email, and phone number is on there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being a great guest. I've really enjoyed this, and I appreciate you joining me.
Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate your time today, and I appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.